All right, keeping it in the NFL, we now look ahead to what Super Bowl 56 may look like, what the 2021 season may look like. We suspect that the Kansas City Chiefs they'll continue to roll on. Patrick Mahomes will come back, get the turf toe taken care of, and he'll be back. Meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady, he said post game that he is coming back, so he will be in search of an eighth ring. So
That's crazy.
but there'll be, we anticipate there'll be more teams in the mix. It shouldn't just be a foregone conclusion that we'll have a rematch. We know what happened to San Francisco this season. Some thought they would be poised to go back, did not work out for them. We got Kansas City and Tampa Bay. They'll be looking to get back to the Super Bowl. But who are some other teams that we should be focused on, and you would classify at this point as real contenders?
Real contenders. All right, so we'll start with the AFC. Listen, you got to get Buffalo right. What would stop Buffalo from being a contender? I mean, they lost to Kansas City. We see that, but I would think Buffalo. Here's one thing that I heard today, and it makes a lot of sense. Patrick Mahomes is going to get surgery on his turf toe. So during this offseason, you think about it, Patrick Mahomes is going to be working himself back to be Patrick Mahomes. What are all the other quarterbacks going to be doing? You ask me, I got to think Josh Allen, I'm put this in quotes, Ryan Tannehill, mostly Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, whoever the coach might have throwing the ball. These teams that made the playoffs, those teams are going to be trying to close the gap on their quarterback to Patrick Mahomes, while Patrick Mahomes is indeed going to be trying to get himself back to his own form. Why does that matter? Because these guys could look totally different, and like you said, anything can happen. Yeah, do I think the Chiefs are still a Super Bowl contender? Absolutely. But now I think the Bills could be a Super Bowl contender. I think if Pittsburgh get their quarterback situation, I mean not quarterback situation, more of the running back situation. I'm gonna say a quarterback running back tandem. If they could find like better suitors in both positions, maybe they can very well be a Super Bowl contender. Uh, Tennessee, Baltimore. Can Baltimore ever make it? Can they take their talents up to the next level and be a contender? That still remains to be seen. We'll see how that go. But then I'm looking at teams that could play their way in. You got young contenders. You got the Chargers. They could play their way in. That's really the only team that wasn't in that I'm gonna give the time and effort to. I'm looking at the rest of these teams, maybe not so much, but you could see a new face. But to answer your question, Kansas City, I do think will be one of the last two teams standing in the AFC. The question is, who would be the other team across from them, and how good would they be? And then let's go over to the NFC. Here's the deal, and I said this on Wax. The NFC to me was more wide open than the AFC. I always felt like the AFC was going to either go through Kansas City or Pittsburgh this year. One of those two teams end up going through Kansas City. Whereas the NFC was a little wide open. You had weaknesses on both on a lot of teams. Green Bay, New Orleans, Seattle, Tampa Bay. It wasn't a clear cut number one to me in the NFC. Next year, we're probably looking at the same thing. Now, if the Bucks take care of business in the offseason, they might be considered the clear cut number one in the NFC starting next year. I don't see why they wouldn't if they take care of business, which I do think they do. A big move I think they do, and this is what I was going to bring up in the last segment, is Chris Godwin, I think, is going to go sign a big payday somewhere else. Antonio Brown is going to take over his spot, and then they're going to re-sign Shaq Barrett. That's what I think going to happen. Could be told wrong, but I think Chris Godwin is going to ask for a lot of money, and he should. He's good. I mean, if he want to bag up that Brinks truck, beep beep, so be it. Don't be mad when you're playing for the New York Jets though. Get paid, but don't be mad with the team that ain't up paying you. But I think the Bucks definitely could be a final two team. Now here's the deal. I said this earlier. I think the LA Rams is a team I look at being a final team. So that's a team that wasn't quite in the mix, but I think that could be in the mix next year. A team that might take a step back if they that don't handle business well. New Orleans, we got to see what they're gonna do with the quarterback situation. They might take a step back. Seattle, we don't know what's going on with Seattle. They're gonna take some steps back. So you got Green Bay. I don't know what to make of Green Bay quite yet. Maybe they go and say, "Hey, Aaron, you done showed us enough. Let us be your friend this time around." And they might go draft them some help. So the end all be all. It is a high chance that we can get a rematch. I doubt it because I do think if I had to make a guess right now, I think we get a rematch in the AFC Championship between the Chiefs and the Bills, and I think the NFC Championship is the Bucks versus the Rams, and we could possibly have a rematch. I don't want to call it Super Bowl, but that'll be my Final Four if I had to make a call for the way too early 2021.
I think both teams will have an excellent chance of getting back, or as good as possible, because you got Patrick Mahomes, who is still he's still an ascending superstar. There's a transformation going on right now, even though Tom Brady just put it on hold. Tom Brady just stole the show in this regard. But Patrick Mahomes, I think it was a phrase someone used in one of the pre-games where someone said Tom Brady is the best of all time, and Patrick Mahomes is the best right now, or something to that effect. And that's what we're seeing. I think it's tough to get a rematch. We know anything can happen. Catastrophic injuries like San Francisco did. There's so many things that can go wrong and derail a situation. But I think the Bucks should. I think Kansas City, when you remember we were going through some of the offseason moves they made last year with locking up Chris Jones and some of the other things that they did. They had a picture perfect offseason that really kind of paved the way for them to get a chance at a title defense. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if Tampa Bay, how much of the crew are they going to keep together. Now they will likely lose some pieces, but I heard I believe it was Pat McAfee who made a good point on this. He said, "Well, you have Tom Brady now, and you're in Tampa, Florida, so it shouldn't be all that hard to get guys to come down and fill in some of those holes. Some veteran type players who maybe want a ring chase and just come in and are willing to take a little bit less to play with Tom Brady and go win. I mean, we just saw. I mean, this is basically what Antonio Brown did. They got Rob Gronkowski out of retirement. Ended up working out to great effect. But to the AFC, I think you're all right as it looks right now. I don't know if there's a better, more balanced team than Buffalo that can give Kansas City a run right now. But I think the wild card is Baltimore. I think Baltimore is the wild card, and it's going to be on Lamar Jackson. I expected Lamar Jackson to take a bigger step forward as far as throwing the football. But also, I mean, I think Baltimore, you'd like to see them, make a more concerted effort to upgrade the weaponry. I mean, I think we kind of expected them to be a little bit more aggressive in the draft, and I like Devin Duvernay, but I mean, you'd like to see them, maybe use a first round pick. I mean, this was a deep crop of wide receivers to where you had a situation where, Justin Jefferson ended up having the best season of all the receivers, and he was drafted. He was the 5th guy drafted.
Second team All Pro.
All Pro. What a fantastic season. Right. But I think I think Baltimore maybe is a wide receiver away from being right back in the thick of things. And you got J.K. Dobbins. We'll see what happens if they can keep the offensive line together. But I also think you mentioned Tennessee. You mentioned I think Miami's worth keeping an eye on. I think if Tua comes out, has a good off season, has a full program to get ready. But Miami's still an ascending team. They got a great young coach. The defense was really good, so they're worth watching. And I think Indianapolis is worth keeping an eye on. I think they're going to bring in a quarterback via trade, and they got one of the best coach and GM combinations. So they're going to make smart moves in free agency. They're going to be smart in the draft. And I think they could have a chance. You remember we saw how close they were to beating Buffalo in the wild card round. So I don't think there's any chance we've heard the last out of the Indianapolis Colts. And I think I would agree with you about the Chargers being maybe one of those teams that were on the outside looking in. they appear to have a quarterback, and there's still a lot of talent on that team, particularly I think on defense. I think there's some holes they need to patch, but they could be maybe a surprise team that maybe upsets the apple cart. To the NFC, I think there's a lot more uncertainty over here because you have New Orleans. They're going to have a quarterback upheaval, so we just don't know what to make of them right now. Green Bay, if Aaron Rodgers is back and he's happy and he's gonna, and the GM and coach are like, yeah, Aaron, we like what you did. Let's come back and let's play at the MVP level again. I think Green Bay is going to be right back in the thick of things. But if not, that's gonna make it a wide open field. And I think when you look at Tampa Bay, you could have a situation where they're really not concerned about anybody in the East, North, or South. It could be a situation where you just look at the NFC West, and those are where your challengers are. Seattle, the Rams. I think both those teams will be worth watching. That Seattle situation is interesting with the recent comments of Russell Wilson, but I also think there's a couple more maybe surprise teams that could get back in the thick of it. Arizona, does Arizona take another step forward? I think they could. San Francisco, we don't know. If San Francisco, can reclaim some health, and we don't. I don't know. Are we certain about their quarterback situation? Do they make a move, and do they say, okay, we're done with the Jimmy Garoppolo injury show? Maybe they're still in the mix for Deshaun Watson. But I think those teams are worth watching. I would keep an eye on Carolina. I think they're going to be in the quarterback market and be looking for an upgrade. And I think that could get them, get the ascent of Matt Rule and company going a little bit quicker. And I also think Minnesota, they can, if Mike Zimmer can buff up the defense, Dalvin Cook, we know Dalvin Cook's going to run the ball like crazy, and you got a great 1-2 punch wide receiver. If we can get anything resembling competency at quarterback with Kirk Cousins, I think those are some teams worth watching. But I do think you're right. That Final Four that you laid out, that could be a very real possibility as we proceed to 2021.